Hey, Life.Church and all of our network churches, I've got a very big treat for you today. As you know, whenever possible, I love to introduce you to those who have influenced me and allow them to bless you. I want to introduce to you today one of the greatest teachers on leadership on planet Earth. No one has sold more books on leadership than this man. His book, The 1 Minute Manager, sold over 15 million copies on the New York Times bestseller list for over 3 years. What I love about him is not just his heart for leadership, but more so, it's his heart for Jesus. I don't want to take up his time. I want to introduce to you a friend, a mentor, a great man of God. Would you please welcome Dr. Ken Blanchard.
I tell you, what a joy it is to be with you all from Life.Church, and I just so am impressed with your vision. I mean, you'll do anything short of sin to get to the lost and teach them about Jesus. And I was lost till I was 48 years old. Can you imagine that, And all of a sudden, the 1 Minute Manager was so ridiculously successful that I was having trouble taking credit for it. And people started saying, why do you think it's so? I said, God must be involved, And so God suddenly started to send all these people after me, and it was 48 years old when I really turned my life over to the Lord. And it's so interesting how you can see his hand in your life backwards, because he gave me the situational leadership and the 1 Minute Manager and all kinds of notoriety and all that stuff, because he knew when I was on his team, maybe I could help. And so I am so excited about that. And when I turned my life over to the Lord, I went to Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and Acts. I wanted to know what the man did. I'm a behavioral scientist. I just started to laugh because everything I had ever written about leadership, anything I had ever spoken about leadership, Jesus did with these 12 incompetent guys he hired. I mean, you wouldn't have hired that lot. Of course, he turned them into the greatest leaders. I mean, how many of you get people who will commit their life to the vision you've set up? And here it is 2,100 years later. And as you all know from One Solitary Life, Jesus never, went from 200 miles from home. He never owned a house. He didn't go to college. But who do people talk about around the world? Everybody loves Jesus, because he's the greatest model for living. And what I found out, he was the greatest model for leadership of all times. And I found out people weren't teaching in the divinity schools. They weren't teaching in the churches. So I guess, okay, Lord, I guess this is why I'm on your team, And when I turned 65 a few years ago, I was talking to Zig Ziglar on the phone, the great motivational guy, and he invited Margie and I to the 59th anniversary of his 21st birthday, And I said, Ziggy, you're going to retire? He said, there's no mention of it in the Bible, except for Jesus, Mary, David, a couple of other people. Nobody under 80 made an impact. He said, I'm refiring, not retiring. So that's what I'm really doing. I'm here today. I'm all refired, and I want to see how I can commute from. I want to see how I commute from San Diego to be part of your church. I mean, this is unbelievable, the energy, Last night I'm praying, because I'm listening to all this music and all. What am I going to say to these people? They're already so pumped up. Anyway, but one of the things I found in our main beliefs in Lead Like Jesus is, number one, that Jesus is the greatest leadership role model of all time. There's nobody that is a better model for us. And secondly, and this is important for all of you to understand, leadership occurs anytime you attempt to influence the thinking, beliefs, or development of somebody else. So all of you are leaders. A lot of times when I say, how many of you are leaders? Only about 20% put up their hands because they think it's all about position. But we all have life role leadership positions, as parents, as spouses, as friends, as colleagues and all. And then some of you have organizational leadership positions, but it's all about influence and all. And so that's really important. So it's so important for you to understand. The third thing that we really believe is that effective leadership starts in the inside with your heart. And the question with your heart is, are you here to serve or be served? And what did Jesus tell the disciples? He said, even I have come to serve, not to be served. And that gets to our last belief, is that servant leadership is the only management and leadership approach that Jesus validated for his followers. So we have no choice but to be servant leaders. And what does that really mean? Well, servant leadership means that you're clear with people on what you're trying to accomplish. That's the leadership part of servant leadership. You need goals, you need vision and all. The great thing about this whole church of yours, Life.Church, is that you have this fabulous mission, set of values and all that everybody can really go after and support. Because if you have nothing, to follow, what are you going to follow? Yourself. One of the problems we have in Washington, in our country, we have no clear vision anymore. So what is it to serve yourself? Everybody's interested in getting reelected and all that kind of thing. We need leaders who first set a vision and some goals and all that kind of thing. And then you turn the pyramid upside down, and now what you're doing is working for what? The people. Working for the people who can accomplish the goals. And see, what you all do is you have such a clear vision, and what you're going to do, anything short of sin, you're going to be out there helping people come to the Lord, because that's where their life comes alive. That's where it is. A lot of people forget that Jesus said, I come to give you abundant life. We always want to pitch the hell card, and say, if you don't sign up, you're going to go to hell and all. Well, that's a nice fringe benefit to me, but what I want to know is, what am I going to do now? How can I make this? How do I bring heaven to earth? I love Tony Evans says, faith gets you to heaven, but it's your works that brings heaven down to earth. And I think that's what you're all trying to do. Is sure, you want to help people get to heaven, but boy, you want to what? Have them live their life. And Jesus said, you will be my disciples by how you love each other and how you serve each other. It's not about you. And boy, that's so powerful. And I tell you, when you see that happen, it makes any organization come alive. Let me just give you an example. As a citizen, the worst department I've ever had to deal with in the government is the Department of Motor Vehicles. I don't know if you've ever had that. I always thought they hired human beings that hated other people. Have you ever seen that? And so one day I lost my license, right before a big trip to Europe, in about a week or so. So I said to my secretary, I got to go to the Department of Motor Vehicles and get a new license to back up my passport. And so I said, schedule 3 hours for me next week in the Department of Motor Vehicles, because that's about how long it takes them to beat you up. See, because organizations where they don't turn the pyramid upside down and they want to keep it up, they think the organization is about rules and regulations and all. And you're talking to a bunch of ducks. And quack, quack, you're in the wrong line. Quack, quack, you filled out the wrong form. Quack, quack, what's wrong with you, stupid? Quack, 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 quack. And they run you around the whole place. So I headed over to the Department of Motor Vehicles for my thing, and I walked in, and I immediately knew something had happened. This woman charged me, and she said, welcome to the Department of Motor Vehicles. Do you speak English or Spanish? Because we're right near the Mexican border in San Diego. I said, English. She said, right over here. Guy behind the counter says, welcome to the Department of Motor Vehicles. How may I help you? And it took me 9 minutes to renew my license, including getting my picture taken. So this woman is taking my picture, and I said, what are you all smoking here? I mean, this is not the department I used to know and love. And she said, haven't you met the new director? It's always the leader. It's always the leader. Can you say that? It's always the leader. Boy, that is so true. So I went over to meet this guy, see? And I said, what's your job as the head of the Department of Motor Vehicles? Listen to this. This is the greatest definition of management and leadership. He said, my job is to reorganize the department on a moment-to-moment basis, depending on citizen need. Let me just repeat that. My job is to reorganize the department on a moment-to-moment basis, depending on citizen need. He had cross-trained everybody in everybody's job. Everybody could do the front desk. Everybody could do the pictures, including people in the bookkeeping department, secretaries and all, because if there was a rush by citizens, he said that your job isn't mission critical. Now get out here. We got to help the citizens. So, I mean, it just blew my mind. Nobody could go to lunch between 11:30 and 2. Why do you think that's true? Because that's when the citizens would come. Now, that blew my mind, but what really blew my mind, a week or so later, my secretary, at that time, Dana, had turned 50, and she bought this big motor scooter. See, she's going to bop around Southern California in her latter years, and all that kind of thing. And she never thought she needed a license for a motor scooter, car license and all. I said, no, you got to get a license. She goes over to the Department of Motor Vehicles, and the woman puts her name up on the screen. Dana's never had a ticket in her life. Perfect driving record, see? And the woman says, Dana, I can see here that in 3 months you have to retake your written test. In California, you don't have to go there but about every 10 years and take a written test, to just see if you're still alive or whatever. I had to do when I turned 70, they wanted to see if I was still, feeble or whatever. And she said, why don't you take both tests today? She said, test? I didn't know I was supposed to take a test. And this woman, she reached across the counter, patted Dana on the, she said, oh, Dana, with your driving record, I'm sure you can pass the test. Besides, if you can't, you can always come on back. So Dana went and took both tests. She brought them back to this woman, and she scored it, and Dana fell one correct answer short of passing each test. So officially, she failed. This woman said, oh, Dana, you are so close to passing. Let me try something with you. Let me re-ask one of the questions you got wrong on each test. Upon thinking about it, maybe you could get it right. Now, isn't that amazing? But you know what's really amazing? There's only 2 answers to each question. And she said, Dana, you chose A. What do you think is the right answer? B. You passed, which was really unbelievable, see. And I was telling this story at a place, and this bureaucrat came up at the break. And you can always tell bureaucrats, they have very tight underwear on, and they kind of walk a little bit like this, and all. And he said, why are you telling that story? That woman broke the law. Your secretary failed, see. Wow. So I went back to see my new friend, and I told him this. And he said, Ken, let me tell you one other thing. When it comes to decision making, I want my people to use their brains before rules, regulations, or laws. He said, I guarantee you, if your secretary missed 3 or 4, she would have never given the same opportunity, but she only missed 1, and she had a perfect driving record. And so my person didn't think it was fair to that kind of citizen to bring him back for 1 mistake. He said, I would, back her decision with my job. Now, would you like to work for somebody like that? Now, why is that? Because that person's got the heart of a servant, and he goes into a bureaucracy that normally does, and he changes the whole place. See, you all can make a difference where you go. And the thing that's going to make a difference, though, is how do you stay on focus to be a servant? The way you stay on focus is that you got to have some habits that keep you focused, see? And Jesus had 5 habits that we teach in our Lead Like Jesus program to keep him online, because you remember, he was both God and man. And so he was tempted like all of us with all of the kinds of things. And how did he stay on top? Well, first habit he had was solitude. How much time do you spend by yourself quietly? I mean, most of us don't spend any quiet time. It's so interesting. We all have 2 selves. We have an external task-oriented self that's used to getting jobs done. And then you have an inner, thoughtful, reflective self and all. Which one do you think wakes up quicker in the morning? Your external task-oriented self or the inner, thoughtful, reflective self? It's what? The task-oriented self. You jump out of the bed, the alarm goes off. Have you ever thought what an awful term that is? I mean, why isn't it it's the opportunity clock? Or it's going to be a great day. No, alarm! And boom, you jump out of bed and you're trying to eat while you're washing, and you jump in your car and you're serving the Lord, but I'm going to go to this meeting and I'm going to do that. You're running around serving the Lord and all that kind of thing. And you get home, and at night you're absolutely exhausted, fall into bed, don't have any energy to say goodnight to anybody who might be lying next to you. Next day you're out of there, boom, And I've seen some people who are, quote, serving the Lord, who are exhausted. And they're more interested in doing than being. And what Jesus wanted us is sure to accomplish things, but he wanted us to be. He wanted us to have hearts to love. You'll be my disciples by how you love each other. And what we need to do is we need to figure a way to enter our day slowly. And see, one of the things that Jesus did was solitude. He went off by himself. He went off for 40 days after he was baptized. That's a lot of solitude. Satan really blew it when he attacked him then because, man, he was solid. He might have been hungry, but he was solid on his beliefs and all. He went off by himself after he found out John the Baptist was killed, I think to deal with grief probably. He went off after he fed the crowd of 5,000, maybe to deal with pride because they wanted to make him king. And my favorite one is he went off by himself. One day, he's doing a bunch of healings, and the disciples are really getting psyched up. I mean, this could really be a good business. But then it says in the Bible, early the next morning, Jesus went off by himself to a solitary place to pray. See, because solitude and prayer kind of go together as two unbelievable habits, And when the disciples got up, and they said, "Where is he? My God, look at the crowds," and they're running around trying to find him. And they get him, and they say, "Jesus, they're all waiting for you." Did he care about those people? You better believe he cared about them, the most caring human being that ever walked the earth. But what did he say? "No, let's go to the next village so I can preach, for that is why I have come." See, because what is interesting about solitude and prayer is you quiet yourself so you can recalibrate who you want to be in the world and what the Lord has put you here for. Because we know whose we are, we're his. Humility is really the realization of complete dependence on God. That's when you get, and we're his. But then who are we is why are we here? And you all kind of need a personal mission statement or feel, why does the Lord have me doing this? Why am I going to do this? And how can I serve with a heart that will make him smile and proud and all that kind of thing? Well, you're not going to do it by racing out of bed because you're going to get caught in a rat race. And Lily Talman, the great philosopher from Hollywood, she once said the problem with a rat race is even if you win it, you're still a rat. So what you got to do is find a way to enter your day slowly. And so Jesus used solitude, a number of times and all. And what do? One of the things that we teach and lead like Jesus is it's wonderful to get up in the morning and sit in the side of the bed and put your hands on your knees and think of all the concerns you have today and then lie them down at the foot of the cross because the Lord's going to take care of those. He can help you with those. And after you've thought about your concerns, then put your hands in an upward motion and listen. He might have some good things to tell you. A friend of ours said she can always tell when God's talking to her. First of all, she gets ideas that she never could have thought of herself. She goes, "Whoa, that's really interesting, And the second question she said, would the devil want me to do it? And she says, if there's no to both of those, then, man, he's talking to me now, But a lot of times we don't take that time to let him talk to us and all. And so that's a really powerful thing. And then prayer. My God, prayer is really powerful. I learned from a friend of mine early on, Bob Buford, about the ACTS acronym for prayer. And what's interesting is I really think that Jesus said, "I will be with you forever," and all. And why can't you imagine Jesus right here? My friend Wally Armstrong, who's a great golfer and friend, he and I wrote a book called The Mulligan together, just wrote a wonderful book called Practicing the Presence of Jesus. And he was struck by, in the Bible, towards the end of Jesus' ministry, he said, "I no longer call you servants, I call you friends. And a friend obeys my command, and I command you to" what? Love each other. And he said, "Well, gee, how can I imagine Jesus as a friend?" And he suddenly got this wonderful image when he was at the Masters following Arnold Palmer for his last go in Augusta, because he's an old buddy, and they were meeting some people up at the 18th green, and Ben Crenshaw, who won the Masters a couple of times, was up there talking to a guy. It was a big crowd, and Wally said to his friend, "Who's Ben talking to?" He said, "Oh, that's Jesus." And he was he hadn't seen the Passion of the Christ, and it was Jim Caviezel, dressed in golf clothes, and khakis and all. And he said, "Why can't I imagine, Jesus just here?" And so one of the things I like to do with my prayers is have Jesus sitting there with me. And the Acts says the first thing is adoration, which is thank you. I mean, you're unbelievable. I mean, look what you created. I'm just blown away, by the beauty and the people around me. So you start off just adoration. And then confession is next. Is what did you do yesterday that you think wouldn't really make him smile? And if you can't think of something you did wrong yesterday, you probably lie about other things too, I mean, because, we're not perfect at all, and so, fess up, because he already knows anyway. And so just tell him, God, I really feel bad, Lord, about that what I did there. I should have listened to that person. I was too busy, or what have you. And then T, thanksgiving, is, boy, be appreciative, be thankful. Thankful heart is just so fabulous. It just brings more good blessings, I think, into you. And then S is supplication, which is, what is your wish list? What are you praying for? A lot of times people start with that, They say, Lord, I want this, this, this. No, that's at the end, after you say, man, you're fabulous, I adore you, and here's what I'm fessing up, and here's what I'm thankful for. And then after you do your wish list, kind of turn to Jesus. He's sitting there with you and say, well, what do you think? And then shut your mouth, A lot of people don't realize prayer is a two-way communication, and you're doing all the talking. Shut your mouth and let him share something with you. You go, whoa, that was really interesting. I hadn't thought about that. I don't think the devil would want me to do that either, And so prayer is really fabulous thing. And then the next thing is the study of Scripture. Boy, is that important, I mean, it's a really good book, I mean, what is the Bible? It's basic instruction before leaving earth. It's just amazing to kind of re-look at that and study it and all. And, get in Bible studies and all. It's just fabulous, And I got a big kick out of the first time I read the Bible, particularly when Satan's tempting Jesus, Jesus could have said, get out of here, you got to be kidding me, I'm at least number 2. But what did he do? Every time he said, it is written, and he quoted the Bible. I mean, he knew the Bible, he knew the Old Testament. The New Testament wasn't there yet, but he was living it. And so the study of Scripture is just so important for you. And if you ended your day with some time of solitude and putting your concerns down at the foot of the cross and then listening, to any advice, and then starting your prayers and using any strategy you have for prayer, and then start to just look at the Bible and get a plan going through there. Or some days I like to just go, boom, and go, oh, you wanted me to read that, I mean, isn't it amazing sometimes you go in the Bible and you just put your finger in it, you go, boom. And it's just the perfect thing. It's just, like, all right, thank you, I mean, the great thing about the Bible, it's the only book that the author will work with you as you go through it. I mean, most of the time the authors aren't around, but Jesus is right there. He's the author. Say, what did you mean by that? And shut your mouth. He's able to tell you, And so you got to read and study Scriptures, and that's another important thing. Those 3 things are all about entering your day slowly, And then there's 2 other habits that Jesus had that I'd recommend to you, because why? Because he did it, so it's not my recommendation. He had a small group that he could be more vulnerable with. He had John and James and Peter and all. Do you have a small group of people that you can be more intimate with? I mean, you're even intimate with the people you might live with? There's a fellow in Seattle who studied marriage for 20 or 30 years. The number 1 criteria for an effective marriage? Does the husband take advice from his wife? He said the biggest problem with marriage is the male ego. I want to be in charge, and the men ought to just get a life, I mean, you probably got the best advisor living with you. Why don't you listen to him? Margie and I just celebrated our 50th anniversary, and I tell you, and everybody knows, Margie knows that I married above myself, which is a real secret. And but I've also listened to her because, I mean, she's so wise. She sees things differently, But it also helps to even have a small, intimate group outside the house, And I have a group of guys I've been with for, 18 years now. And we're just there for each other. We don't compete with each other in business and all. We're just there with each other. I'm also in a Bible study group at 6 in the morning on Wednesdays, and we start off and saying what's happening and all, and then we got the most incredible Bible teachers. Don't you love these Bible teachers who know the Bible so well, and somebody tells them a problem, and he says, oh, go to Isaiah, one this, and then go to here to Matthew, and I go, whoa, how does he know that? But it's unbelievable what's in the Bible, because there's no problem that you can have that's not there. And so that's being in a small Bible group is really important. So you can have a small group that you can be more intimate with and you can get back. And then the final habit that Jesus had is to trust the unconditional love of the Father. I mean, wasn't he really interesting in the garden like any kid? He asked his father 3 times, I don't have to go through this, do I, Dad? Our kids like that, you say no, go through it, or do this. And then they ask again and again. And finally he said, what? Thy will be done. Just trusting the unconditional love of God. Good comes to all, what? Who have faith and believe in the Lord. And what gets in people's way, I think, is that they think their self-worth is out there by how much money they make, the recognition they get for their efforts and their power and status. Let me tell you, there's nothing wrong with, making good money or even getting some recognition or power. What's wrong is if you would think that's who you are, because then you need more. On these people, and all of a sudden it's tough economic times, and they take a $20 million bonus when they've laid off thousands of people. I mean, they need to get a life. How much do you need? But they keep score that way. But what's the opposite of those success things? It's really significance. And what's the opposite of accumulation and wealth? One that's so important to this church, what? Generosity. That's so important. It's not what you get, but it's generosity not only with your treasure, but your time and your talent and your touch, reaching out to people. What's the opposite of recognition? It's service. Jesus said, even I have come to serve, not to be served. And what's the opposite of power and status? It's loving relationships, which is really so important. My friend John Ortberg, who's a wonderful preacher and author, wrote a wonderful book about his grandmother, and it's titled, At the End of the Game, It All Goes Back in the Box. And his grandmother was an incredible Monopoly player. Any of you ever play Monopoly when you're young? He said his grandmother was a vicious Monopoly player. And at the end of every game, she had everything. He had nothing. And she would get this big grin on her face, and she'd say, John, someday you're going to learn how to play the game. So when he was about 12 or 13, this kid moved next door, was an incredible Monopoly player. And he practiced with his kid every day one summer because he knew his grandmother was coming in September. And when Grandma came, he ran out of the house, he gave her a hug and a kiss. And he said, Grandma, how about a Monopoly game? And her eyes lit up. Let's go, John. But he was ready for her this time. And he came out of the chute, and he wiped his grandmother out, and he had everything. He said it was the greatest day of his life. And his grandmother smiled, and she said, John, now that you know how to play the game, let me teach you a lesson about life. It all goes back in the box. And he said, what? He said, all you bought, all you accumulated. See, the only thing that's important in life when all is said and done is who you love and who loves you. And remember when Jesus said, when they asked Jesus, what are the big commandments? What did he say? It's all about love. Love God with all your heart, all your mind, and all your soul. And love thy neighbor as thyself. Oh boy, that's a really powerful kind of thing. And it's in love. And I think in John it says, if you know God, you know love. If you don't know God, you don't know love. And if you will take that love in your heart, it will live within you. And see, that's where the action is. That's where the whole thing is. And to me, everything about this wonderful church is about reaching out with love to people, because you're not out there slamming people and all. You're walking alongside them. I think Jesus came here not to create a religion, but for relationships. And I think this church, this wonderful church, is all about building relationships with people and walking with them, and in your walk, then introducing them to the Lord. And so they know that they got somebody on their side. They have a partner in life. They have somebody who absolutely loves them no matter what they are and forgives them. It's all about grace and forgiveness. I want to tell you, it's fabulous. But you need some decent habits to remind yourself out of this. Otherwise, you can get caught up in life and get caught on the treadmill and then that lousy rat race. And Jesus doesn't want us. He said, I come to give you abundant life, which is joy, peace, and righteousness. So God bless. What a joy it is for me to be here with you at Life.Church. You're doing great work, and I'm loving and praying for you. God bless.